I keep seeing the same video over and over again. Brain rot, content addiction, zero attention span, brain rot. Many of these videos give explanations for how we got here. Dopamine hits, algorithms, bad incentives, corporate greed, a brain that evolved in a relatively unstimulating hunter-gatherer environment that now finds itself in possession of unfathomable technology capable of delivering infinite bursts of stimulation with only the tap or swipe of a finger. But maybe all of this isn't quite as bad as it seems, which feels like kind of a hard thing to argue because it seems pretty bad. What it seems like is that with each passing day, the plot of the movie WALL-E becomes more and more like a true prediction about our future. Although in WALL-E, it is the case that once the planet had been devastated by an environmental disaster, we were able to evacuate the human population into space and live as blob people, as opposed to, say, having civilization collapse into a Mad Max-style free-for-all playing out in a barren wasteland. Maybe what will happen is that the richest citizens are able to escape to the safe haven of an orbiting space station, while the less fortunate are forced to remain on Earth and battle for scraps, which is actually more or less the plot of the movie Elysium with Matt Damon, which I've never seen. Here's the thing, no one actually knows how this is all going to play out. Human technological progress has advanced so rapidly over the last 100 years that it can almost feel like a foregone conclusion that it's only a matter of time before all these shiny toys we built to amuse ourselves with eventually fry our feeble little primate brains. But time and time again, we've found ways to adapt our lives around each new innovation. If you are unhappy with how much time you spend distracted, mindlessly scrolling on your phone, and concerned about how that is affecting your overall life, productivity, and happiness, and concerned about the fact that everyone around you has the same bad habit and how that is affecting the overall productivity, happiness, and social cohesion of society at large, it might seem a little strange to see a headline proclaiming that scientists can't decide if social media is addictive. Although the article is quick to point out that social media can be harmful, something all behavioral researchers can agree on. When people say they're addicted to social media, they're often using that language in a fairly casual way. For example, if I was to say I'm addicted to playing chess, especially at times when I should be working on finishing my latest YouTube script instead, that's not at all the same as me saying I have a crippling alcohol addiction. Don't worry, I don't have that. Per the New York Times, for many years the scientific community typically defined addiction in relation to substances such as drugs and not behaviors such as gambling or internet use. That has gradually changed. In 2013, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the official reference for mental health conditions, introduced the idea of internet gaming addiction, but said that more study was warranted before the condition could be formally declared. The fifth and current edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM-5 for short, is also the first edition to include gambling addiction under the category of addictive disorders. And it's been argued that the design of the major social media platforms intentionally mimics that of slot machines at a casino and incorporates other casino-like tactics to keep users hooked. In fact, a lawsuit filed against Meta last year directly accuses them of having designed psychologically manipulative product features to induce young users compulsive and extended use. Now, the way in which mental health disorders are classified and the possibility of holding social media companies accountable for the behavior of their users is a complicated issue. One small study with a potentially positive finding followed 51 students for 15 days, including a week during which they were instructed to avoid social networking sites. The study found that while 87% of the participants weren't able to stay off social media entirely, their use time decreased to an average of 30 minutes, down from between 3 and 4 hours per day. And in contrast to substance addictions like drugs and alcohol, the study did not find any significant withdrawal symptoms associated with reduced social media use. But this is just one small study, and virtually everyone agrees that more research is needed. And none of this is to say that spending too much time on your phone can't become a serious problem that negatively affects your life. It's useful to look at content addiction at both a societal and individual level. Using the alcohol example again, a majority of people in society drink alcohol at least from time to time, but only a very small percentage are serious alcoholics. So when almost everyone you know seems to average between 3 and 4 hours of doing mostly mindless shit on their phones, it's hard to know where to draw the line into a more serious addiction. And, as was discovered with alcohol, I can't say for sure, but I have a feeling that an all-out prohibition would not go over so well. One way to look at this is simply to ask to what extent your social media addiction is negatively affecting your life. I think a lot of us are still able to accomplish the most important tasks we need to get done throughout the day, in spite of the amount of time we also spend doing mindless scrolling on our phones. But there's always the nagging feeling of wondering just how much more focused and productive we could be if we didn't feel the need to punctuate our day with constant little breaks to scratch that itch. Now, it's important for me to say that my perspective on this comes from someone who is 35 years old, and I can sort of still remember how life was like before. It's hard for me to imagine all of this from the point of view of someone from Gen Z, or now Gen Alpha, who's never really known a time before smartphones. In his 2024 book, The Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt makes a forceful case that the recent surge in teen mental health problems is being caused by the near-universal use and availability of smartphones and social media. But Haidt has also been accused of oversimplifying a complicated problem, because although the correlation between the rise of social media and the rise of teen mental health problems is very striking, there is no conclusive evidence to prove it is primarily being caused by social media. Still, it's hard not to at least be concerned by what appears to be a very strong correlation, and there is an element of it that just makes intuitive sense. So whatever age you are, if you feel like social media or overconsumption of media in general is negatively affecting your mental health and causing serious problems in your life, I strongly encourage you to talk to people who are qualified to deal with these issues. People have often pointed out that virtually every time a new form of media or entertainment is introduced to society, people inevitably worry about how it will affect the children. Video games is an obvious one, but people have also had plenty of concerns about rock and roll music, comic books, television, even novels, and the radio. But that's not necessarily to say that the introduction of these new forms of media have had zero negative consequences. Indeed, since televisions became a ubiquitous fixture in most households, both kids and adults have increasingly chosen to just sit and watch TV for hours every single night at the expense of virtually all other activities like reading or talking to each other or playing board games or playing piano or just sitting and blankly staring at a wall for 20 minutes or whatever else people did before television. Still, it is worth pointing out that it's not as if before smartphones existed or before televisions existed we were razor-focused and hyper-productive all of the time. I think as long as human beings have been around, we've probably found various ways to distract ourselves from the tasks at hand and procrastinate the things we don't really want to do. But the world is a bit different now. I recently watched a really good video essay from a small YouTube channel titled The Importance of Inconvenience. In this video, Meckles Frog points out that the way we consume media has consistently evolved to enable greater and greater convenience. We used to have to go to the rental store to get a movie to watch at home. Now it's instantly available via streaming. We used to have to put a record or CD or cassette into our stereo system to listen to music, and now we can stream it anytime we want on any number of different devices. We used to have to go on the family computer in order to use the internet for as long as we could before our parents kicked us off. Now we have instant access to it at virtually all times via a device we carry in our pockets. But Meckles makes the case that in this rush towards convenience, something has gotten lost along the way. The excitement of going into that rental store with your family, browsing the new releases, maybe picking up some candy, and finally getting home to settle in and watch the movie you chose. The special feeling of taking a CD or record out of its case and deliberately choosing to listen to it as opposed to just letting the Spotify algorithm spoon-feed you songs on shuffle. Now, while this is not to say that the old ways of consuming media are simply better than the new ways, I certainly don't miss having to rewind a VHS tape every time I want to rewatch my favorite movie, and then eventually finding that that VHS just doesn't play right anymore, no matter how many times I hit the tracking button on the remote. Yes, I feel old for even being able to remember that. But it did seem like not having instant access to all types of media at all times made each piece of media that you did consume feel a bit more special. I remember back in the early days of YouTube when I was around 16 having friends over to share various videos that we had discovered and literally dying of laughter, like laughing and smiling so much that our faces hurt. Now we can scroll through hundreds of videos and not laugh out loud once. Mostly it's just that brief little exhale we've all gotten so used to doing. Of course, many people, even those among the younger generation, still enjoy listening to vinyls, shooting photo on film, reading actual physical books, even playing old video games via old gaming consoles hooked up to old TVs. In part, I think because there's a growing fascination with the nostalgia, aesthetics, and relative simplicity that comes with older technology. It's comforting to know that old forms of media still exist to be explored, and it's important to remember that not all types of new media are fundamentally all that different from the things we used to enjoy in the past. But there is one new type of media that seems to be universally accepted as the final nail in the coffin of both our rapidly shortening attention spans and perhaps civilization as we know it. And that's short-form content. When people talk about social media being a sort of endless slot machine, this is often what they are referring to. As you fiendishly scroll through TikTok, obviously not every video you see is going to be interesting to you, but the possibility of hitting a true jackpot always seems right around the corner. So on and on you go, chasing the next reward. I recently saw a clip of a couple teenagers explaining how TikTok is their favorite pastime and how even something like watching a TV show simply takes too much focus. As in, they can only concentrate on watching a TV show if they are also simultaneously scrolling on TikTok. And if this is representative of any kind of sizable majority of the younger generation, then yeah, we may have a bit of a bigger problem than I was hoping to admit. Yet, despite the fact that short-form content is now an inescapable part of virtually every social media platform, long-form content is also more popular than ever. Want to watch Lex Fridman talk to this guy about how to fix the government for 7 hours and 47 minutes? You can have it. Want to watch Lex Fridman talk to Elon Musk and others about Neuralink for 8 hours and 37 minutes? Sure thing. Want to watch Lex Fridman talk to this guy about a bunch of crazy shit for 4 hours while deep inside the Amazon rainforest? You got it. Of course, long-form content is often consumed while simultaneously doing other things, so if we're being honest with ourselves, perhaps another facet of content addiction is the fact that people can't be alone with their thoughts for even a few minutes while they're walking to the store, so instead they pop in their earbuds and listen to the soothing sounds of Lex Fridman talking to former conman Matthew Cox for 6 hours. Still, awesome and deeply insightful video essays are now more popular and more numerous than they've ever been before on platforms like YouTube, and you've now been watching this one for... And sure, you might just have this on in the background, and you might just be scrolling TikTok right now or trying to get some work done on your main monitor, but at some level, I think you really are hearing the points I'm making, and perhaps you're thinking deeply to yourself about whether in the future you should try being on your phone just a little bit less. But this isn't supposed to be a self-help video. If you would like a self-help video about how to reduce your screen time, there are about 1.3 trillion of them available to you right here on YouTube. As one popular video on the subject puts it, we all got tricked into content addiction. And I think that's accurate. Perhaps it is the fault of tech companies for knowingly designing and continually tweaking their products to be more and more addictive, and perhaps at some point in the future there will be a reckoning in which they are held accountable for their actions. But even still, I think it's pretty clear that there is no way to close Pandora's box at this point. So it seems like for now, all we can really do is try to tackle this as individuals. Maybe one of those self-help videos works for you. And maybe as more and more people start to actively work on reducing their screen time, it will grow into a cultural movement. Maybe that's already happening now. Maybe we aren't that far away from a time when pulling out your phone during dinner will be taboo, where people choose to look up from their screens and smile at one another, acknowledging the joy of our shared humanity, where we live in perfect harmony with both the natural world that birthed us and the technology we use to improve but no longer to dominate our lives, where the age of Aquarius truly dawns and we stride boldly into the next dimension of human consciousness, unburdened by the vices and demons that tormented us in the past. But yeah, I think most likely people will just keep going on their phones all the time. Still, I think there is one other possibility that's worth considering. Something us humans are actually really good at. Maybe we'll just get bored. When something is incredibly popular, it can be hard to imagine a world where that thing is no longer popular. But then, sometimes, time goes by, and one day you look around and realize it's totally gone. Remember fidget spinners? Where did all the fidget spinners go? And sure, fidget spinners aren't exactly as big a deal as highly addictive content on social media, although they do also, in their own way, help us to fill that void of having to face even a few seconds without some form of stimulation, but still, it's hard to imagine that, say, TikTok represents the end state of how we consume media. Many trends in human culture are circular, and it doesn't seem too out of the question to think that maybe we'll just collectively burn out of this current phase of content addiction, and it will instead be replaced by something that was popular in the past. Like books. Okay, it probably won't be books. Or maybe content will become supercharged by virtual reality and AI technologies capable of generating anything our little hearts could desire, and ultimately leaving us far more content addicted and more blob-like than ever before. But that's a topic for another day. Barring some sort of global catastrophe, the internet will almost certainly remain a primary fixture in our day-to-day lives. But that doesn't mean that our relationship with it won't evolve. And as much as there are plenty of reasons to believe that evolution will increasingly lead us towards a darker and darker future, I think it's also worth considering the possibility that we actually will find a way to live in better balance with this powerful technology. And hey, look, you made it to the end of this video. Your attention span is just fine. You don't have brain rot. You're a cool person.